I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today. It's funny, I was talking to law enforcement because, as you know, in Open Carry, Texas, we will work with law enforcement, but we never ask for permission. And that's because I always want to make sure of several things. One, that they know we're here. Two, that they respect what it is that we're going to be doing. Three, if something happens, they can respond quickly. And four, also to identify who's who in the group. But the reason we're here is for Mr. Chad Summers. We're at the park where Mr. Summers was brutally beaten, nearly murdered, and then arrested for crimes he didn't commit. So I was just a consultant on the case, and the good news is we got a hung jury. The bad news is it looks like they're going to try it again. And so the purpose of this event here today is multifold. The first is to show support for Mr. Chad Summers. When we shared the event with the local media and it was posted on social media, it really disturbed me a little bit that a lot of the comments were about Mr. Summers' weight, as if your Second Amendment rights depend on your body fat mass index, as if your rights depend on how you're dressed, as your rights depend on what you look like, what kind of job you have, where you are, those kinds of things. Rockwall's got kind of this butter mentality. And what do I mean by that? Oh, I support the Second Amendment, but you shouldn't be walking with a gun through a park. I support the Second Amendment, but you shouldn't carry that kind of gun. I support the Second Amendment, but not when there's kids around. As if kids are any less worthy of protection. They always start with, I'm an avid gun rights supporter, but, well, then you're not an avid gun rights supporter. I support the Second Amendment 100%, but, well, that's not 100%. I support the Second Amendment unless you're committing armed robbery. That's not what the Second Amendment's about. It's about the lawful keeping and bearing of arms. And there's two parts of that. The first is you have the right to keep, to have, to possess, to own, to purchase a firearm. But everybody seems to forget that second part, the bear part. To bear arms. You have a right to bear arms. What does that mean? That means to take the weight upon you, to support. So if you don't support somebody walking through a park, and I can tell you, that day, Chad Summers had a reason for carrying that gun, and the cops are lucky he didn't exercise his reasoning. Because the whole point of a firearm in the Second Amendment is to oppose tyranny. And exactly what happened at this field, or at this park, was tyranny. So this isn't a protest against Rockwall PD. This is a protest against Rockwall police officer dogs. This is a protest against Rockwall police officer Krause. This is a protest against Rockwall police officer Stewart. And this is a protest against Rockwall police officer Lawson. That's who this is a protest against. Because what Chad Summers was doing that day is what many of us here are doing right this second. So if it was illegal back when he was arrested, it's illegal today. And I guarantee you we're not going to be getting arrested. And the chief even said we're not going to be getting arrested because he recognizes this is not only protected speech, but protected gun rights. Citizens of Rockwall, when you see this video, I hope you're as pissed off as I am. Chad Summers on that day, he parks over here in the parking lot, just like all of us have parked. He grabs his rifle and his Gatorade, and he does 2 laps. He's already done 2 laps. So he's done at least, in my estimate, because I just went and walked it, at least a quarter mile or a half a mile walk at this point. So Karen calls. That's not her real name. Karen calls the police and says, there's a guy with a gun out here. She says he's not pointing at anybody. He's not threatening anybody. But she's scared. By golly, she's scared. Now on the stand, and she doesn't say anything about illegal conduct. Just a man out here walking with his gun. Doesn't say a word about him waving it around. Doesn't say a word about him pointing at anybody. Nothing. And again, he's already done 2 laps. Matter of fact, he stopped and pet some dogs. One of the people who was walking had some dogs, and they stopped and talked to him, and he pet the dogs. There was a woman with a stroller that stopped and talked to him with a baby in a stroller. Yeah, that was scary. But yet this one woman who testified on the stand that she just finds guns scary. That she doesn't understand guns. She's never held a gun. And when she saw the gun, that's what she was afraid of. That's not what the law said. So I wasn't the attorney, by the way, in this case, all right? So I can talk about anything I want. I'm just a consultant in this case. However, he did just hire me to be co-defense for his next trial. So we're going to win next time. On the stand, she even admits that her fear is irrational. This is sworn testimony that her fear is irrational. Chad gets to about that point. The officer pulls up here, and she starts trailing him. She says something to him, and he turns around, and she's like, hold on. He's like, no, you can come walk with me, but I ain't stopping unless I'm committing a crime. I ain't stopping. I'm walking. You can come walk with me if you want. Turns around and keeps walking. Nothing wrong with that. Not committing a crime. It's a consensual encounter. You don't have to talk to cops if you don't want to talk to cops. Keeps walking. She unholsters her handgun. And she's walking through the park like this with her handgun. Who do you think is really the scary person in this park? So right about there, she says something to him as well, and he's telling her, I am not talking to you as long as you got that gun in your hand. Put your gun away. If you want to talk to me, you put your gun away. So I ain't going to do that. No, whatever. They keep walking. So at one point, she essentially orders him to stop. He's like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll stop when we get to the shade. I'll talk to you when we get to the shade. So he gets over here to the shade. Meanwhile, she's made a phone call, and she's even said on the radio that he's just walking. He's not hurting anybody. He's not threatening anybody. He's not breaking any laws. He's just walking, but he won't talk to me. Not a crime. Sees that he's gotten into the shaded area. He says, okay, you're in the shade. Now, will you talk to me? And he says, well, yeah, as soon as you put your gun away. And she's like, well, will you put your gun down? And it's on a sling. That'd be like asking me to take my gun off right now. I'm going to have to, move it around and all that kind of stuff. He's like, no. And it's just hanging in front, perfectly legal. So he tells her, he's like, well, I'll tell you what I can do. And he pulls his single point sling and he kind of tucks it under his arm on the opposite side, tucks it under his arm. And he's like, how's that? I'll make sure it doesn't move. And it's kind of behind him a little bit, but he can't move it because he's got all this stuff on, all this gear. And he kind of moves it behind her and she holsters her handgun. They start having a conversation. He's explaining to her. She's admitting and agreeing that he's not doing anything wrong. I get it. It's constitutional carry. She's misquoting what the law is, but don't worry about it. She's like, you're not doing anything illegal. 3 other police officers show up. The lead officer, Officer Doss, is in charge of the scene because she's the one that witnessed the legal conduct that they're trying to criminalize, apparently. And they're talking, and these other officers come up, and then they start interjecting. They start escalating the situation. Doss and him are having a good conversation, but at one point, I think they're trying to get him to identify. He refuses to identify because he doesn't have to. He's like, well, look, y'all need to know this is a consensual encounter. I can leave anytime I want. And she says, yeah, you can. What's the exact words, Ryan?
Yes, that's fine.
Yes, that's fine. He drinks his last bit of Powerade, and he says, well, I'm going to go and refill this because I'm thirsty. You're free to walk with me. He starts walking. The people who showed up later, he's like, no, stop. They start chasing him, pointing an AR-15 at his head. The other officer's got her pistol to his head. He says, I will fucking drop you, bitch. He's scared. He's scared at this point, so he starts to try running. He's running away from the danger. The female officer that had arrived grabs him by the arm and tries to stick her gun to his head, and he grabs her wrist and is pushing her wrist away from his head. You can see it on the camera. Yep. He's holding it away from because he doesn't want to get shot, murdered in cold blood for doing absolutely nothing wrong. And they're doing this thing. She's trying to shoot his ass. He's trying not to get shot. So one of the other officers comes up with his AR-15 and starts headbutting him with the back of his rifle, right in his head, using the buttstock of his rifle, beating him in the head. They get him on the ground. The officer starts punching him there's a young lady here. Starts kicking him in the sensitive parts. And punching him in the sensitive parts because when they fall to the ground, his arm is underneath. His sling has trapped his arm underneath him, and you can see that, you can see it indented into his arm, that there's no way he can get his arm out from underneath him because they're all on top of him. The sling has come down and wrapped around his arm, and now his arm is stuck underneath him, and they're beating the shit out of him. Sorry, that's all I can call it. Twice they threatened to murder him. The officer says, I will fucking drop you, bitch. and the other one who says, I will put a bullet in your head. For what? For walking on this trail and daring to exercise his Second Amendment right. Now, do you know what they charged him with? Anybody know? Disorderly conduct's one of them. Attempting to disarm a police officer. Attempting to take the police officer's arm. And their testimony is that when he's grabbing the arm, he's trying to get control of that pistol. Now, I don't know how you do that when your other arm is way over here and he's literally going like this. You know, he's got his arm trying to get his arm in the air while he's got the cop's wrist over here. She's facing him. So you see this pull and tug. The state and the prosecutors, in their utter stupidity and ignorancy, who should lose their license, and the officers who should lose their license. I don't know. If somebody's pointing a gun at your head and you're going like this, are you seriously pulling the gun to your head? Well, that's their argument in court. He was trying to pull the gun closer to him so he could take it. How's he going to do that when he's got a police officer right here, the gun's over here, his hand's way over here, and it's doing this? Never once does it reach around, reach across, nothing like that. The biggest question between the jury is, what's the difference between control and take? And they're trying to say that just by controlling the gun, that's evidence of him taking the gun. And that was a jury question. They wanted to know, like, what's the difference? There's no legal definition for control and take. It's pretty obvious what those words mean. Yeah, he wanted to control her arm. He never once tried to take that gun. You know, if somebody's trying to take your gun, somebody's going to say, especially a cop, he's trying to get my gun. He's trying to get my gun. Or he's got his hands on my gun. Or he's got his hands on her gun. He's trying to take her gun. None of that was ever vocalized. They realized that they screwed up, and they invented this felony charge of attempting to take a peace officer's weapon. That's where we are today. So we're here today to support Chad, and also to let Rockwall County know, whether you like it or not, we have to support the ability of people to do it.